Okay, some really quick announcements. So tonight we have two for the free price of one. We're going to have two talks by some great speakers here who really know what they're doing. And I'll let them introduce themselves some more. Then in January we'll start our regular meetings again. And we usually do the Grammys. Last year we were lucky enough to get this room for the Grammys. I'm hoping we can get it again because it makes it nice and private and quiet and everything. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ben. He's going to tell us about his new little documentary here a little bit and show it to us too, or some of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb. Big thanks to Barb and Combo for inviting me here. My name is Ben Makinen, and I'm a local drummer and music producer. What happened to me when I was in high school is I would go down to El Chapultepec at 20th and Market.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed in, but my friends and I would go to the side door and watch the musicians. I was this close to the hi-hat of Nat Yarborough. Well, Nat Yarborough was the house drummer at El Chapultepec in the 80s, playing with Billy Wallace, who had been a piano player for Max Roach. That to me was the first time I actually could smell, the smoke and the sweat of musicians creating. I could hear the grumbling beneath their breath, the quips across the stage at each other. I mean, a whole new, that's the dimension we don't get from records, right? And so I was hooked. I mean, I was already in love with jazz at that point, but well, fast forward a few years, I went away to college in Miami. I came back, continued some college here in Denver. A friend of mine called me and said, come on down to the Peg. There's a piano player who wants us to jam with him. Well, that was Billy Wallace. Well, the drums at El Chapultepec were Nat Yarborough's drums. The drummer that I idolized as a high school student, he was still the house drummer. Well, with his permission, I was able to use his drum kit because it was set up there all the time. Billy played a happy hour gig before the big heavyweights took over for the night. So a buddy and I would go down there and sit in with Billy Wallace, and I developed a friendship with Nat Yarborough, the drummer. Fast forward about another decade, and I'm into my professional career. Nat and I find each other on the street talking, and Nat is lamenting the lack of community within the musician-artist world. The fact that people wouldn't just come over to talk. They wouldn't come over to your house to talk unless there was a paid rehearsal or a gig involved. And he was telling me how, as an up-and-coming drummer on the East Coast, I mean, people would come to your house all the time and hang out and party and eat and talk and just talk art and ideas and life. And he missed that, and I knew that that was lacking in my life. I mean, he was absolutely right. I never went to anyone's house unless it was a rehearsal for a paid gig. And you're right. Otherwise, we're practicing, and in our minds we're caught up with the importance of our little world, I guess. But so he and I made a promise on the street that night to hang out. Well, I didn't keep that promise. I fell back into my routine. A year goes by and he's dead. He died. And I felt like less than that big. I felt so stupid. And everything that you can imagine that goes with that. But I realized then and there that I had to start doing what I had promised him and go to these musicians in my free time and just hang out. Well, hanging out became this need for me to honor my mentors and to get their stories. Because Nat died. He's a great drummer. I don't know if he's in any books. He probably doesn't have a Wikipedia yet. I'll probably write one for him. Anyway, I realized that so many of these powerful musicians who had roots connected to the heavyweights that you will read about, that you do read about in the history books and you do see in the documentaries, a lot of people who came to Denver are directly related to those people. Nat was one. There's some other guys in this film. So 8 years ago I started to do that. And this is the result of it. What I'll show you tonight, what I'm going to show you tonight is sort of an intro to the film that kind of hopefully sets the tone, shows you what's going to happen, and then it It ends with a oh no, you were saying you're looking for help. I'm almost done editing this, and I'm going to be needing a team. I'm that classic. I'm going to be looking to get contributors, start a Kickstarter. I've got to raise money to hire Dave again to help me with the legal clearances for a lot of this stuff. So feel free to approach me if you have any feedback or thoughts about how to take it to the next level.
Okay, go.
This is the first time I've ever showed that to a group of people, so it was good for me. Yes.
I missed the beginning when you came in. I don't know if you prefaced. So how? And I'm the sister, by the way, but I really don't know this. How long is this documentary when it's going to be finished? What's the full length going to be?
Excellent question. I'm shooting for this to be a full feature length, at least 90 minutes. I have enough material for it to go longer. I'm going to be pretty self-critical. If it doesn't maintain its interest, if it doesn't keep moving forward, I'll cut it back. I mean, and I found a storyline. I was on what I thought was a good storyline that would be a natural conclusion to all the stories of all these people working to do music. Last November, the Colorado Music Hall of Fame held an induction ceremony at the Paramount Theater for the jazz wing, and they were going to induct 4 Lifetime Achievement in Jazz awards. They were going to induct 4 people. Well, I interviewed 3 of them. There are 3 of those Lifetime inductees are in my film: Diane Reeves, Ron Miles, and Charles Burrell. We didn't really get to see much of them today, but they're all there. And so I was reaching out to the Music Hall of Fame people to let me come in and film it for the purpose of showing, because people have a different experience as musicians working for a living. Some become bitter and don't have any success. Others, boom. I mean, look at Diane Reeves, 5-time Grammy winner, I think. So the stories of different people's lives, but this film was going to take us on sort of a positive ending by showing the culmination at that event. Lifetime, Earth, Wind, and Fire was going to be there as well. Jazz, I don't know, but they were included on the billing. But the organization was in flux. There was inner turmoil. The man who was in charge, whose number I was given to contact, never returned my calls because he was either being ousted at the time or stepping out. What happened is I finally talked to Chris Daniels. He's an executive director of that now. He said they completely dropped the ball. There was no camera present there that night for the induction ceremony. And I was outside on the street corner with my camera. I was like, would you please let me in? So I have footage of the marquee from that. Who are you, kid? You're moving along. So I'm not sure now what my through line is. So it'll be feature length if I can make it.
Well, and if you've got the content, you already have the content for it to be feature length, or are you still adding content?
I do. I'm going to finish up an interview tomorrow morning with Ellen Rucker. I had some footage and stuff with her, but she's the last. I have enough right now to do it, but.
Well,
I'm sorry. Let me jump in. But I'm talking with Joe Lopez, the car guy. He's a great bass player in town, and he helped my daughter find a used car. There are a lot of people that deserve to be in this film, and there's a lot of other stories. There's a whole other component going on here that I intend to get as well. But that being said,
well, one of the central themes you're going for is it's Denver's jazz scene.
Exactly.
And if there's any kind of content that can point out, like, there's a difference between Chicago jazz versus Dixieland jazz versus Denver jazz. What makes Denver jazz Denver jazz?
That's fantastic.
I build to it or something like that.
And that would be what Ron Miles actually addresses that, because I asked him that question. You know, if you read the old jazz history books back in the day, Washington D.C., Kansas City, Chicago, New Orleans, every place had a very distinctive sound. And you could almost, just the way a drummer played his ride cymbal, or you know, the way the band swung or didn't, showed you where they were from. And so I was interested if those distinctions still exist. And there are, Ron Miles, for example, believes that the wide open nature of our state, the incredible peace, informs a lot of the music that all musicians here grow up making. You know, from Devotchka to whatever. But yeah, that's a great point. If I can pull that back in. Yes, yeah. Yeah, my goal is to pitch. I mean, I've been working this for 8 years. I'm going to go for it. I'm gonna act. You know, the Obamas have their own division of Netflix now. There's Clint Eastwood who does jazz movies. There's Quincy Jones. I'm gonna let them all know. Hey, you can have part of this if you want. I mean, why not? I'll shoot for that, and if it ends up on Channel 6 PBS locally, that's cool too. Yeah.
Full sends only.
What's that?
Full sends only.
Full sends only. Yeah. Any other feedback or? I know the audio is jacked. That's the color and the audio needs a professional treatment at some point. But is there anything that you guys would like to see more of or less of, or?
What about a Kubo tie-in or something?
Yeah, a Kubo tie-in. I'm talking to them as well. One of my goals, as I answered your question, I mean, I feel I have enough. I did want to interview Norm, the jazz critic, Supervisor, thanks, to get a perspective, and I wanted to interview one of the DJ, the radio personalities down at Kubo to get some different perspectives as well. Kubo's interested. I talked to their executive director. They're ready to, you know, help when that time is there.
Will there be other non-players such as commenting on this jazz?
Good question. That was my intent. And here's where I'm at. The question is to have some more non-musician characters aside from government Hickman. Yes, I wanted a music critic and a DJ, but I may pursue that. I feel like I'm running out of time. I've got some momentum. I've got to get this thing done. And doing more interviews I've done everything myself. So it means, you know, going to someone's home, doing the film, setting up, taking it back, doing it. It's a lot of work. And not that I'm averse to the work, but I'm not sure. I think if I get to the end and I need that, I'll go find more.
Can you talk a little bit about the arc of the film in total? So right now what we saw was the answer to the question, what is jazz? But what are your current, you said you missed out on one storyline, but as it's laid out in full now, what are the questions you address or the arc that you traverse?
Right. Did everyone hear his question?
Yeah.
Basically asking me, what is the arc, the true story of the film? You know, he noted that the question, what is jazz, has been answered. And that's interesting that you point that out to me, because it makes me think that perhaps my thought was that by doing profiles, sort of like Reka, that last one was a 5-minute profile where we didn't really leave her. I was thinking of connecting a whole bunch of profiles as we go through the community that way, stitching them together with Denver as the protagonist, if you will. But you're making me think that could tire out, and you make me think that perhaps I should hold off on the answer if there is an answer. I have to be very clear. I'm not proposing that I know what jazz is. I'm not going to say I have the answer to that. But if I let the stories of people who have very different experiences, and as we go into their lives and see success or not success, and then that brings us to finally, well, after a life doing music, what is jazz to you? Maybe, in other words, maybe not have complete profiles, but
with any profile have a topic that they addressed, and then go to the other musicians who address the same thing, and then move on.
Ben, excuse me, I hate to cut you off,
Sure.
but we need to go on with
Okay,
Dan.
yeah. Woo! There we go.
I also brought handouts for way too few people. So maybe take one and share. It's probably one for two people. And this is not the letter of the law. Like if you want to print out the law, it would be, I don't know how many pages, way more than you want to handle. But I am here to talk about the Music Modernization Act. So I guess, briefly give you my background since I wasn't allowed to before. Can everybody hear me? Do I need my phone? You're good? Okay, cool. So, I think, basically, when I was in my 20s and living in Boulder and had a great job working for .com and had a salary and had benefits and it was a great job for a kid my age. I realized I was going to work every day and punching the clock, right? I was doing something, I'd walk out of the office and didn't think about it again. I'd walk back into the office next morning, and while that seems really great right now, at the time, being idealistic, I thought, I want to do something that I'm passionate about, something I really care about. And so I quit my really good job, and I said, what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about music. I called up my favorite band at the time. I said, I want to work for you. They said, okay, come sell CDs and t-shirts for us. I got the bus and wanted to road to fame. Much to my parents' chagrin. But I learned really quickly, I learned a lot about the music business. Right? Because those of you that have toured or just play gigs around town, you know that you can read books all day, but actually being out there and doing it, that's how we learned it. So I was on the road as a roadie, I became a tour manager, and was tour managing this band for a while. They needed a manager. I started doing their management. I got off the road, started managing other bands, started a management agency, and so I'm managing these bands, and every time I got a contract for one of these bands, I had to find a lawyer to read it. Because if you ever read a contract, it's not English, right? It's legalese, and nobody makes any sense out of that. Same reason I didn't print out that.
It's all Greek to you, huh?
Yes, right? Legalese is all Greek to, well, except me anymore. So my band is a lawyer, so I went to law school. And I was just talking to someone earlier today about how so much of the music business is so unreachable sometimes, about how all this mechanical licenses and sync licenses and publishing versus writer share, publisher share, publishing, composition, master, sound equipment. And I gotta tell you, something about when I was managing, it was a lot harder to grasp until I actually run the legal side of it. So I started a law firm called Creative Law Network. We specialize in doing law for creative people and businesses. Music is still my passion, so that's what we do a lot of. And Barbara was nice enough to ask me to come talk about the Music Modernization Act. So you guys are all really in for it. So here's the thing. What I was going to do is, I don't know what time, how much time you
Well, we usually
talk.
try to end about 8, but I think everybody's okay with another 15 minutes or so.
So here's the thing. What I want to do quickly is talk about the way it's set up now. And then we talk about how it's changed. And the main reason for that is because if we don't have an understanding of this kind of basic terminology and interplay of rights, the changes don't make sense. So, a few things, and forgive me for those who did our notes.
Thank you.
And you can just have another beer. Or pepper me with questions. Please call out, raise your hand, ask me questions. I'm not here to lecture. Right? I'm here to help everybody here understand this stuff. So, very basics about what we need to talk about as far as copyright law. What this all is about is copyright. Copyright is the legal structure that provides exclusive rights to creative works, not just music, poetry, photography, video, choreography, architecture, all protected by copyright. But as it relates to music, and so if you own a copyright, you own a set of exclusive rights, which means you're the only person who is allowed to duplicate the copyrighted work, perform the copyrighted work, create derivatives of the copyrighted work, And so that's why that copyright's really valuable. It's also confusing because what you're allowed to do with that copyright is basically it's in your hands, but you can license it, you can grant other people the right to use it. You can assign it, you can sell it to someone else. And one of the really important things about copyright is that whoever contributes to a copyright is a co-owner of the copyright. So to the extent that Ben and I are sitting backstage and writing a song, he writes music, I write the lyrics, we co-own the copyright for that song. Then we go and record the song, and we bring in a few more people to play on that track. Well, now everybody who played on that recording co-owns that recording. Two different copyrights. Copyright's really confusing. For music, it's twice as confusing. There's a copyright in the composition, the words, music, what's written down. There's a completely separate copyright in the sound recording, the master. Okay. And so I can write a song. I own the copyright in that composition. I hand that composition to Ben. He goes in the studio. He records it. He owns the sound recording. It's kind of like, well, wait a second. I have the exclusive rights. How did that? I own the copyright. I have the exclusive rights to make a recording of it. He just made a recording of it. This is the mechanical right. The mechanical right is the right to mechanically reproduce a composition. It comes from days of like player pianos, player notes. And that mechanical right is a lot of actually what the Music Modernization Act is doing. So, mechanical right is important. And the way that the law deals with mechanical right is it says, once I've written a song, and I publish that song, put it out in the world, anybody else can go record it. It's what I call a compulsory license. I'm compelled via that license, I can't turn you down. Which is why anyone in here could go record a cover. Right? You can choose any song out there, you can go record a cover. You don't have to ask me. You have to pay me a mechanical license. That license is important, but that license is compulsory, set by statute, also called statutory. And the mechanical license fee is set by law as well. So 9.1 cents per copy. No, it's not going to be tested. So that is one of the things that the Music Modernization Act is dealing with. Another part of it is on the other side, not the composition, the sound recording. So one of the tricky things about the difference between sound recording and composition is the public performance. So, who's here a member of ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC? Awesome, as we should be, right? So, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC are performing rights organizations. Okay? And what performing rights organizations exist to do is collect performing rights royalties. But this only deals with the composition, not with the sound. So, the way these things came into being, like I said, you own a copyright, you own the exclusive right to perform it. So if I write a composition, I have the exclusive right to perform it, not only live, but when it is played over a loudspeaker in a bar, at a health club, in an elevator, that's a public performance. When it's played over the radio, that's a public performance. I can't be in every bar and every radio station collecting my royalties for that public performance of my composition. That is what ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC do. The tricky thing is, so the second part of the act, sound recordings, there is a very limited public performance right for sound recordings. So when a sound recording is played over the radio, it does not generate a royalty. This is something that musicians have been fighting for many years. One of the only countries in the world that still has this bizarre loophole. But the owner of a sound recording does not get paid for royalty over terrestrial radio. There is a royalty when it's played. It's called a digital audio transmission over the internet, basically. So, anyone have heard of Sound Exchange?
No.
Sound Exchange collects the public performance royalty with sound recording. Thank you. And that gives you enough background for me now to talk about what I'm actually paid to do today. So, the Copyright Act was last significantly revised in 1976. Things have changed a bit since then. Right? That was before CDs ever get like the internet. And so, there's a lot of things that are wrong with the Copyright Act right now, especially as it relates to music. We just fixed a little bit. And we all know that things are not exactly harmonious in Washington right now. The Music Modernization Act passed unanimously in the House, 435 to 0.
Oh, yay.
People love musicians, right? We love musicians. So, this has been years in the making, 10 to 15 years in the making for the Music Modernization Act. Passed the House, a bit more of a battle to get to the Senate, but passed the Senate in September. They brought together, they basically married the two versions, and the president signed it on October 11th. So still fresh. Part of that means I'm not going to answer a lot of your questions, because a lot of it hasn't quite been figured out yet. But there are 3 parts to the Music Modernization Act, and that's what we're going to go through. Don't read that text that I get. That is from, I will not take credit, that is complete plagiarism. But it's from the Copyright Office website. It's not copyrighted. The government, the U.S. government, not copyrighted. I'm not violating copyright. I'm copying and pasting it out. I'm also not taking credit for it. If you were room on the page, it would have said, courtesy of the U.S. Copyright Office. But if there's anything wrong on there, it's also not my fault. So, Title 1. Musical Works Modernization. Okay. Title 1 deals with mechanical royalties. Specifically, mechanical royalties for digital streaming services. So, when I write a song and Ben goes and records that song, mechanical license, he's going to owe me a mechanical license fee. Okay? If he wants to print CDs of that song, he's going to pay me 9.1 cents per copy. This act changes none of that. However, when that song goes and shows up on Spotify, a totally different way that I'm supposed to get paid. That's what the act is fixing. Because right now, it's really hard to get paid, basically. As a songwriter, as the owner of a composition, it's hard to collect the mechanical royalties for your music or your composition being played in digital streaming service. So, what Title I does is creates a mechanical licensing collective, we call the MLC, Mechanical Licensing Collective. And what this collective is going to do is basically take in all the money from the Spotify, Pandora, all the streaming services, take in all the money to go to the MLC, and then the MLC is going to pay it out to all of the copyright owners. Done. Easy, right? Now, what's going to have to happen is every copyright owner is going to have to register with the MLC, just like you do with ASCAP or BMI, and say, these are my songs. This is how you contact me, and this is how you pay me. The streaming services will just make payments into the MLC. The MLC will pay out to those copyright owners. Similar to the way ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC work, this is not going to be a one-to-one payment. You're not going to be able to go and say, hey, I have 327,972 streams on Spotify, therefore I'm owed. It's not going to work like that. They're going to have an algorithm, just like ASCAP, BMI, that's going to say, well, based on the way, because there's so many streaming services, right? They're not going to count every stream. I'm sure they could, but what's done is done. But they will have an algorithm for how that's paid out. However, and so this all sounds great, right? However, a couple things. If you don't register, you're out of luck. And you will have no course of action for not collecting those, for not getting paid those royalties. In other words, this is the only way to get them, and the exception would be those streaming services are permitted to create direct licenses. So if, for example, you were a publishing, a major publishing, your publishing company could do a direct deal with Spotify and skip the MLC altogether. Another thing about the MLC is that the MLC will collect for US streaming of the world's compositions. So if you work with or know people that are not in the US, they still have to register with the MLC to collect for streaming in the US by any of these streaming services, of which we are. There are a few other things that the MLC is the most significant change in Title I. There are a few other things that may or may not be of interest to you guys. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question before you move on from that. I guess for the MLC, is that specifically for like streaming the digital audio transmissions? I guess the question is like, what's the difference between that and sound exchange?
Okay, so sound exchange only collects for digital audio transmissions of a master, a sound recording. And the MLC is only for the composition.
Gotcha.
Yes, yeah. So sound exchange, when we say sound exchange won't change, Title I doesn't change sound exchange. We'll talk about sound exchange in Title III. So there are a few other changes. Again, they're not that significant. It's about how, there's two things basically. One is how we set the rate, the license fee, so that the way that's going to be set is what's called the willing seller, willing buyer standard. Basically, like I said, the royalty rates are set by the Copyright Royalty Board. It's getting a little wonky, and the way that the royalty board sets those rates is going to change. If that has interest for you, you can talk to me afterwards, so I don't put anybody else to sleep. The other thing is that ASCAP and BMI have what's called rate courts. And they're basically courts where we set the rates for ASCAP and BMI. That is also going to change. Previously, there was one judge for ASCAP, one judge for BMI. Now those judges are going to rotate. So that's most of Title I. There we go. We got a lot of nodding. I like this a lot.
I'm a little confused. You said that sound exchange does mechanical royalties, and the MLC does essentially also mechanical royalties. Yeah, they're different.
So it's actually, so sound exchange doesn't do mechanical royalties. Sound exchange does performance royalties.
Okay.
So sound exchange is like the ASCAP BMI for your master, for your sound recording. Because ASCAP BMI do performance royalties for the composition, and sound exchange does performance royalties for the sound recording. By the way, I'm trying not to talk fast, but I know I'm going fast. This is literally like, I teach entertainment law at the law school. We're doing 3 weeks of class in 45 minutes. I take like 15 minutes because I didn't teach the Modernization Act. So please ask me to back up. Yes, sir?
I saw an article where Dave Mason was asked whether he had a new album. And he said, yes, but I'm not releasing it. You get 10,000 hits and you make $250.
Yeah.
It's a pretty tough time now for musicians.
It's true. Spotify, and I mean, just streaming in general does not pay. We're not selling CDs anymore. We're making money from licensing. You know, distinct licensing. We're making money from selling tickets, sponsorships. I mean, it's unfortunate, but yeah, that's not. I mean, this is why I mean a lot of my clients don't even sell their albums anymore. They're spending a lot of money to record the albums, but it's not worth it for them to even print physical. Yes, sir. Yes.
I understand that BMI has kept there on a quarterly basis. What about SoundScan and this MLC?
So, Sound Exchange, I actually don't know how frequently Sound Exchange pays out because I don't see those statements.
I heard something about the 22nd of the month, but I wasn't exactly sure, so I just wondered if anybody else.
Yeah, anybody get Sound Exchange royalties? Quarterly. Emily says quarterly, and I trust her. She knows her stuff. She definitely knows her stuff. MLC hasn't been set up yet. So this is actually one of the things, like I said, a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight we don't have answers to. The MLC does not exist. We do not know where it will exist, who will run it, or how. It will have a board of 14 people. We don't know who those board members are going to be yet. So have me back in 2 years and we'll talk about it. But this is, I mean, literally this act is weeks old. So there's going to be a lot more keeping us busy as far as it gets rolled out.
If you guys can hold your questions, I'm sure Dave at some point in time may answer them. So,
okay.
Okay.
I appreciate it though, because actually what I was going to say is the other thing we don't know about yet is in Title II. So I'll move on to Title II. I feel like I need like the boxing, like round two. So Title II is the Classics Act. And as, I don't even know I don't remember what Classics stands for, but as it implies, it's about older recordings. So one of the things that happened when we had like I said, the Copyright Act 1976, okay? Before the Act of 1976, copyright was state by state. You could have state copyright protection. The 76 Act said, that's a mess. Copyright is now federal. There's one copyright, U.S. Copyright Office, if anything was easier. It actually did. It made things simpler. However, one of the things it also did is it said, the 76 Act said, if you made a sound recording before February of 1972, it is not protected by the Copyright Act. There's no federal copyright protection for those pre-1972 recordings. Clearly, there's a lot of people who aren't so happy about that, right? Especially as it relates to streaming, to the digital audio transmission. It doesn't get that protection. I overstate. It has copyright protection. It doesn't have protection for the digital audio transmission. What the Classics Act, what Title II of the Music Modernization Act does, is says we will now give copyright protection to pre-1972 recordings. There will be a process. You have to go register your pre-1972 recording. And there is a term. It won't last forever. Copyrights don't last forever. There is an end date, which is going to be 95 years after the date of first publication, I believe. And they basically will provide for protection for these pre-1972 recordings and therefore for royalties for these pre-1972 recordings. Yes, sir?
What happens to the money if you don't register? Like, register late or something, does it sit in an account or does it spread out? And you don't get it.
So it doesn't last forever, because nothing does. The MLC, I believe the MLC money I think sits for 3 years, I think. And then the pre-1972 recordings, I mean, if you don't register them, the money never exists, basically. And then the money that you will not be due back royalties. Your royalties will only be due from the day you register going forward. Yeah. So, kind of figured pre-1972 is relevant to most of us in here. Did they have music back then? I'm getting insulted people here. I'm definitely getting insulted people here. So there is kind of more about that, but if it isn't of great interest.
It's just a big concern to like a radio station, because I know a lot of radio stations, internet stations, they pay music from 62 on back so they can get around paying royalties.
Exactly. This is exactly it. So for the internet streaming of a sound recording, you hit it on the head. So what was happening is radio stations were doing digital audio transmission, so internet radio, of recordings from prior to 1972 and not paying royalties on them. Now, if you own one of those pre-1972 recordings and you go and register it they will have to pay you a royalty.
Yay.
That is it. So, hallelujah. Right? And I mean, it is significant. And this is something that people have been fighting for a long time. Now, it doesn't change the fact terrestrial radio, I said earlier, there's no public performance right on terrestrial radio for the master. It doesn't change that. It's only talking about the digital audio transmission. Okay. Yes, sir.
What about Pandora? Did Pandora buy a terrestrial radio station and they paid those royalties
So
differently because of that?
there's a few things that are different. So there are different royalties for different types of streaming. And Pandora is what's called a non-interactive streaming service. Spotify is an interactive streaming service. Although I think Pandora Pro you can interact. And what that means is, can you call a song? Because if you go to Pandora, at least the base version, you can say, I want to hear a song like this song, but you can't get them to play a particular song. Right. Spotify, choose any song you want. These are different streaming regimens. And what we're talking about, well, Title I only applies to the interactive streaming.
Okay.
And then Title II applies to all of it, because that's all digital audio transmissions. Cool. I like that. Cool. So the last thing I'll talk about is even more specific. Title III. Title III is the AMP Act, Allocation for Music Producers Act. Great with your acronyms. So, people said they knew about Sound Exchange. Who has ever registered stuff on Sound Exchange?
I have, it's crazy.
Why do you say that?
It's just paperwork, and then if you don't get it right, they may or may not get back with you, and then you're just guessing. You're going to check this month, next month, and then you have to go back and say, oh no, you didn't do this right. Do it again. It's that same process.
Yeah.
Just because I'm stubborn, I just going back.
Good for you.
Going back.
Good for you. Yeah, so, I mean, the Sound Exchange, there's a lot to fill out. There's a lot to know. It's more than just what you do in ASCAP and BMI. It's kind of like writer share, publisher share, done. Right? And you just have to know your splits. Sound Exchange is more confusing because of the way they divide the royalty, basically the ownership. And one thing that Sound Exchange had never, and it's worth noting, for the public performance of compositions, we have ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So 3 different you can choose. Wait, CSAC need an invite, you can choose between ASCAP and BMI. For the public performance of the sound recording, Sound Exchange. Only game in town. Okay. So this, and which was created by Congress, created by the Act, by the Copyright Act. And so this is kind of updating some mistakes they made when they created Sound Exchange, because you know that when you're recording, the producer often has a major role in the creation of the sound recording. But there wasn't a way for producers to get their piece of the pie in public performances. There wasn't a way. Producers weren't registered with Sound Exchange. The recording or the featured artist was, the label was getting some, but the producer didn't. So what the AMP Act does, what Title III does, is say, okay, producers, we're going to throw you a bone, we're going to give you your percent. And so it's going to change, but unfortunately it's going to further complicate how you register your song with Sound Exchange. But for producers, they're psyched about it because now they're going to get a piece of the pie as well. So people got to get easier and simpler as we go from Title I to 3. Now 4 minutes before 8 o'clock. Look at that. But questions? Yes, sir.
This is sort of like a hypothetical question, but it's like, what if something like Sound Exchange were to come into play now, like a new organization? How would that affect this newly vetted Modernization Act? Because then would you have to recreate it all over again, I guess, and implement new policy?
So what happened when the law created sound exchange, it said, you're the only one. I mean, basically, because if you think about it, just like, it's a monopoly. Sound exchange is a monopoly. So it is created by Congress as a monopoly. And so there can't be another sound exchange. In most countries, there's only one, and most countries don't have ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, there's only one. And the only way that ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC survive is because they have what's called a consent decree from Congress. So Congress basically said, you guys can exist as as almost monopolies, like a duopoly, a triopoly. But that only exists because Congress allows it. So there can't be another sound exchange. The difference is with all of these licensing schemes, you can do what's called a direct license. So when someone is using your copyright, it's a license. Right? And so most of us are going to license our rights through ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. You can go direct and say, I'm going to skip that. Artist and licensee, we're going to make our direct license here. We're not going to use ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. But it's kind of rare to do that. But it's allowed. You can do it. It's just if you're going to use a collective, if you're going to use one of these performance rights organizations, it has to be one of the ones that are already established. Yes, sir.
So the licensing is granted by performance rights organizations, being copyright for written or being for mechanical. There's also live performance, right, as far as like playing cover and bar, for example. Is any of this going to affect or maybe even increase the amount that a bar has to pay for that licensing and like dissuade them from allowing people to play covers in their bars?
So all of the a public performance, like a play cover and bar, is ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. So every bar that every place that has a loudspeaker, every public place that has a loudspeaker has to have a license from ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. They should be collecting and then paying their songwriters. This doesn't change any of that. All that's going to remain the same. The difference is the only thing that this affects is the mechanical. And the mechanical, again, is just the mechanical reproduction of a composition. So basically, take a composition and make a recording of it. And the only way it'll change that is that if what's playing over the loudspeaker is Spotify, Spotify is paying a different royalty for that. So it'll change that. But there's so many licenses we have to. It's confusing, right? The mechanical license, the public performance license, and the sync license, synchronization license, are the main licenses we're dealing with. And this is really only affecting the mechanical. So, not the performance, not the sync.
Is the Harry Fox agency affected at all in this?
Yes. So what Harry Fox does, Harry Fox is a mechanical security. So when I want to go record a cover, the easiest way, I don't have to request permission, but I still have to get a license. I have to pay a license fee. And that would be really challenging if you can't find the copyright owner. And you have to calculate how much do I owe because it's this many CDs, this many streams, whatever. Harry Fox has done all that for us for a long time. So they have the right to issue mechanical licenses and accept mechanical royalties for millions and millions of songs. So yes, it is going to change for them. How they interact with the MLC remains to be seen. But Harry Fox, a few years ago, started Song Trust.
Song Traders?
It's another arm. So if you go to like HFA.org, it's like there's two halves to Harry Fox now. And I think my guess is they're going to start focusing on the sync licensing, the other direct licensing that they're doing.
Is that when they got bought out by CSAC?
I'm not sure when it happened. I'm not sure if that was really but yeah, it will definitely change for Harry Fox. Yeah.
Will any of this make YouTube any more transparent than what they are?
YouTube more transparent. Yes, in the sense that the mechanical royalties are going to be, I don't know if it's more transparent, but the part about setting rates and like I said, that it's kind of wonky with the willing buyer, willing seller rate. That will affect what YouTube has to pay. It is still, I mean, it is hard to collect from YouTube, and the reality is, it's hard to collect publishing no matter what. Right? I mean, really, you can't collect your publishing royalties as an individual, because YouTube is not going to write you a check. They're going to write a check to a publishing company or an administrative company, but they're not going to write millions of checks to individuals, and that's how a lot of these services work. So I'm always encouraging my clients to use an admin, like actually a lot there now, you can use companies like CD Baby and TuneCore to do admin, and now publishers, Downtown Music Publishing now has Song Trust, which is an admin. Basically, what a publisher does is two sides of things. A publisher helps exploit compositions, which sounds kind of dirty, helps you get compositions used, right, recorded and written and covered. And then a publisher's real job is to collect the money, right? And so what they're doing is admin. And at this point, it's so hard to admin your own publishing that really the only way to do it is with these admin companies, and then they collect from you too, and all those other folks that are really difficult to work with. You have a question?
I was just wondering if this affects the payout rates for streaming, because I know there can be direct licenses and they can negotiate that. But is there going to be a new minimum rate that all streaming services have to pay, or is that yet to be negotiated?
It is setting the mechanical rate the streaming has to pay, but not for the master side. So yeah, it is not. I think, you know, ultimately, I think the Title I is going to result in more revenue for songwriters because you're going to be able to collect your mechanicals. But it doesn't solve the problem of how hard it is to make money in general, or how hard it is to collect otherwise. And it, unfortunately, yeah, you're still going to need 1 million streams to make a few grand, and it's not going to change.
What would be able to change that? Just a new act to push through Congress?
Well, actually, I don't. So mechanics, prior to the Musical Modernization Act, mechanicals were still set by statute. The streaming rates on the master side are not set by statute. So that is, so it is not, I mean, Congress could get involved, but I wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon. And that's why I was saying it's so hard to make money just from, well, from album sales, right? from streams and downloads. And that, unfortunately, is not likely to change.
Are you happy and excited about the MMA? Or in a perfect world, how would you fix all of this?
He said a 3-week class.
I gave up on perfect worlds a long time ago. They're real, honestly, it is, the MMA, the Music Modernization Act, one thing that showed us was how difficult it is to find common ground, and how rare it is we can come to a resolution that everyone's going to be happy with. And the way it showed us that was that, yes, we had that wonderful and unusual unanimous passage of the House, and then went to the Senate, and all of a sudden, everybody started throwing wrenches in it. CSAC said, we're not going to agree to it unless you do this. And the Music Publishers Association said, we're not going to agree to it unless you do this. And there were billboards, I mean, it got nasty. And so, I don't honestly know what you could do, because the biggest problem, I think, is that you really have, I mean, as with everything else, in my opinion, in politics, it's run by money. That's, I think, one of the biggest problems in our political system at this point, in general, is that money runs the show. And so, yes, artists are represented, but artists are represented by the organizations that collect money for artists. Right? And so, you're not, I don't think you're going to get to a better system, at least from Congress. You're not going to get to a better system until we take the money out of politics. And people and politicians and policymakers are free to actually do what's right and not just what raises money. And there is one good thing I will say that is, I think, covered on the back a little bit, is that the Copyright Office, I mean, if you've tried to do a copyright registration online and you still have errors, you didn't pull it all out, that's impressive, right? I mean, it's really, the Copyright Office is far behind. And they are really making a concern. And they are, Copyright Office is actually part of the Library of Congress, so they are controlled by Congress, and considered the first strings are controlled by Congress, but they are really making a concerted effort to modernize. And that, I think, is going to help just make things a little bit smoother. It will not be a panacea for musicians or for artists in general. But I think we're making those baby steps.
Dave, was it Taylor Swift who pulled her music from everything and said, until I get paid better? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's certainly, artists have the right to do that. Absolutely. But most artists aren't Taylor Swift. You know, it's like, I mean, for most of us, you can go say, well, I'm not putting my music on Spotify.
So who cares, huh?
The tree falls in the woods.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, right? I mean,
right.
And there were the holdouts. I mean, deals were holdout for a long time. And there's a lot of significant acts that have tried to throw their weight around, which I totally respect. But you can't, none of these artists, including someone as influential as Taylor Swift, can't stop the music economy and can't change it just by controlling her or one or a catalog. And I think, you know, doing exclusives, for example, is something that, you know, that's out there. And none of these things have proven to really be game changers. Because, I mean, for better or worse, where we're at now is like the consumer controls, right? It's like, we all decided, I'm not going to spend $12.99 on a piece of plastic. I'm going to listen for free, or hopefully I'm going to pay $9.99 a month or whatever it is. And that, you know, I mean, this is why, I mean, when was the last time you downloaded for 99 cents from iTunes? Right? Because all of a sudden, that's what Apple, like, Steve Jobs had this great idea, and he was making a ton of money, and then Spotify came along and said, the consumer wants this. And so it's consumer driven, it's not artist driven. I think that's what we see.
Yeah, but did you think of U.S.-China relations?
I think we've got some problems with intellectual property infringement in China. That's not part of tonight's debate. Absolutely not. So here's the thing. Like I said, this stuff is. We had a lawyer from the U.S. Copyright Office come and speak. Actually, it was the day that the act was signed on October 11th, and he was talking to a room full of lawyers, and he still did what I just did, which was talk about this is how it works, and then this is how it changed. Because all this stuff is so confusing. And there's a lot of good information out there. Be careful the source of your information. There's a lot of bad information out there. I remember a few years ago, I went to the Wikipedia page for copyright, and it was wrong. Okay, so definitely, you know, I mean, we all have to learn. I mean, I'm always learning, we're all always learning, and definitely continue to do so. But be careful of your source of information. Yes, sir?
I just had one last quick question about the Music Modernization Act. Did they in any way address, like, the Music Modernization Act? You think they'd be addressing some of the newer technology? Maybe anything about this weird, unsettling, posthumous hologram concert, like nostalgia stuff that I'm sure that artists like Prince wouldn't really approve of, but he's going to wind up on stage singing next to Slash someday, I'm sure.
I actually just saw Roy Orbison.
Did you see the Roy Orbison? Oh.
I did. So, interestingly enough, the hologram stuff isn't copyright. Because that's a public performance. They just need an ASCAP or BMI license.
But isn't it a recording of the original artist?
Right, but the only permission you need to go and put on a hologram show. Yes, you need the rights to be a sync license to create the hologram, and then, but that's from the rights holders. And then the venue needs an ASCAP BMI license, again from the rights holders. What the special right we need is the right of publicity, the right to use the imagery, and that is actually state by state law.
Oh.
Yeah. Depends on what state you died in. So that's a whole other topic. So yeah, so that has not been touched upon. Yes.
Okay, so this is all new, but how soon do you think that we will be able to sign up for the MLC? And how soon does any of this actually take any kind of noticeable action?
So 2 years is what they're saying for the MLC. There is, I was looking at my notes, there's a 200, within 270 days, the Register of Copyrights, who's the head of the Copyright Office, has to choose, I think, who's going to run the MLC, and then the MLC has a year and a half to, or a year and a quarter, to get their act together, basically. So we will let you know. But not yet, we don't know that date yet.
Are there any likely candidates for the board members, or is that?
Throw my name in that. There it is. No, we don't. So there is. It did dictate who has to be, or rather, the 14 have to be 10 music publishers and 4 songwriters. I think that's what that is. I think it is. So it is set by characteristics, but not by individuals, and that will again be part of the creation of the house.
One of our members had asked about that. I sent it to you and I put it under buyer beware, which was
yes.
the $3.95 to register your song.
Oh, didn't you publish my answer?
Not yet. I just thought they'd all like to hear what you had to say directly.
Did you guys see this was in the newsletter, Mark, that someone had written in? So, I said earlier that everyone, you own a copyright just by creating something, right? We say as soon as you lift your pen from the paper, you own the copyright. However, we still have a copyright registration system, which means you need to register your copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office in order to. Your registration is basically the best legal proof you can have of your ownership. You need that registration certificate in order to go to court to enforce your copyright. So I'm always strongly encouraging my clients to all register their copyrights. However, there's a registration fee. Pain in the butt. The Copyright Office website doesn't work that well. All these reasons that we don't register copyrights. But the registration fee is a big part of it. $35 to $55, and it's going to go up. And one of the combo members found a website that said $3.95? $3.95. Register your copyright. Well, it didn't say register your copyright. It said protect your copyright. Right. So what it was doing is basically this service for $3.95. They'll write down in their database that you wrote a song. Basically, that's all. It has absolutely no legal value. The legal value, or rather, it does not have the legal value of a copyright registration. There is no substitute for a copyright registration. Has anyone ever heard about mail it to yourself in a postmark?
Yeah.
Everyone knows? Great. Best myth out there. Fantastic way to support the Postal Service. Otherwise worthless. The only way to have a copyright registration is to register with the U.S. Copyright Office. And the only thing that that service was doing was basically saying, we'll keep a list of your copyright for you, which is the exact same thing that's on your computer, or that you could just write the list.
Well, they can send it to us, and we'll take the $3.95.
Right, exactly. Download can start its own list.
Yeah.
You charge $3 and save the 95
There
cents.
you go.
It still has no legal value.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to. That was honestly a really good example. Just read the fine print. If you go, it was on, what I sent to you and what you can post online is right out of their FAQ. You just have to, it's unfortunate people trying to take advantage. So, yeah.
Could you clarify the term terrestrial when you were talking about this?
Terrestrial radio is FM and AM. That's basically, yeah. So the distinction between FM, AM, and streaming. Because FM, AM There's no public performance right for sound recordings. Digital audio transmission there is. So, yeah. I am sure that you will all be lying in bed tonight going, oh, I should have asked him that question. Send me an email. My card is up here. It's on our the website, the law firm information is all on that handout. I know this stuff is confusing. There's no way we could have covered all of it. And so I definitely welcome any future questions. I'm happy to let you know. So thank you all for being here.